Welcome, everybody, to the Fantasy Football Strategy Guide. This is Paul Miller. I'm sitting in with Brian Christiana, Dylan Kleintop, and Parker Rose for our final look. We're going to wrap a little bow on the 2018 fantasy season. We're also going to take a look back at some of the playoff games, specifically the championship games. We're going to look at the upcoming Super Bowl, and, of course, we're going to look ahead to 2019. So, gentlemen, we have a jam-packed show. Are you all ready to go?
Of course.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of reflection on the championship games. So we're going to start off by talking Saints and Rams. What a game here. The Saints started off very hot, but cooled off in the second half, allowed the Rams to come back. But I want to talk about this pass interference or non-pass interference call on the Rams. So the play is, first of all, they were lucky to even get down there. A bomb to Ted Ginn got them in scoring position. And then the next play went to, wide open for a touchdown, but the Rams defender basically not only tackled him before the ball got there, also had a helmet-to-helmet. I guess what I want to kind of take away and what I want to ask you, what do you think about replay on pass interference? Is this something that should be done? I mean, basically that non-call cost the Saints a shot at the Super Bowl. And of course, we have people that are suing the NFL now at this point. What can be done about this? Brian?
All right, well, personally, I think the people that are suing the NFL and want to be redone it makes no sense. I mean, they're not going to redo a game, or they're not going to redo that situation.
But did you know, though, that the commissioner has the power to do that?
Michael Thomas put that on Twitter that he wants that time, but it's not going to happen. So I mean, it was a crazy play, don't get me wrong, but there was also a lot of other things involved, like the play calling the Saints had. I think they also, maybe on a first or second down, they went pass instead of run.
And people could argue that they shouldn't have even thrown that pass.
Exactly.
That they should have just ran the ball, milked the clock, kicked the field goal. So, again, I think for people who are looking at this pass interference call,
as being like the make or break play,
it wasn't, and frankly, it really shouldn't have even happened. To be honest with you, so that's a very interesting point. So you're against replay on pass interference?
I mean, is it going to happen? I think it'll eventually happen, but I mean, there's just I want to be more clear. Like, I want to hear more what the rules are going to be on it. Like, is it going to be, do you get a certain limit of challenges on a penalty for that? Like, what are they going to do?
I would imagine that they would just make it status quo, that you can still have as many challenges as you normally had, but if you wanted to use one on pass interference. I think the second problem here is that almost any play could be pass interference. I mean, almost any pass you see, there's hand fighting between the offense and the defense. I think it would be, I don't know how good of an idea it would be. Obviously, in this one isolated circumstance, there probably should have been a replay on that.
And another problem is going to be, like, people are going to be complaining that there's no defense in the NFL again. I mean, a lot of people complained about roughing the passer this year. Imagine if
and we'll get to the call on Tom Brady.
Yeah, imagine if they get into that with pass interference. The defenders, they don't even know what to do.
Yes.
Honestly, people are going to be complaining, oh my goodness, there's another flag. Oh my goodness. So,
Dylan, what was your opinion on that play? I know you watched it. Do you think we'll ever see a league that has replay on pass interference calls like that?
I sure hope we don't have a league that has replays on pass interferences. One, because it just slows the game down. It takes all the energy out of the game for a replay on a penalty that a ref missed. I mean, yeah, it was a pass interference. Everyone can agree on that. But it happened. Get over it.
And I don't disagree with you, but I don't know that it would necessarily slow the game down, because if you're not allowing extra challenges, if you're only allowing the 2 or 3 challenges per game that it's already in the rules, to me it wouldn't really slow it down all that much.
I'm just thinking of it as a fan's perspective. If you go to a football game, you're there for 3 hours.
Oh, I mean, that's if you're lucky.
It's insane. I just think baseball's done it. They've sped the game up, have they not, Parker? They given like the pitcher a clock and stuff. And I think
not yet in the majors, but it might be coming.
I think adding flags, obviously there's flags, adding challenges for penalties it's bogus. There's no defense in the NFL anymore. You can't even touch the player after 5 yards. And God forbid if you tackle the player a little harder than usual, you get flagged. The NFL is completely changing, and I think they're going down the wrong path.
Parker, what was your opinion on that play when you saw it?
It was an obvious pass interference call, but the whole year, the NFL officiating was absolutely horrible.
To the point where refs literally got fired after games for missing false start calls.
So when you're questioning the fact that they want to put in challenging pass interference calls, which I think is ridiculous because challenges aren't made to challenge penalties. They're made to challenge other plays like spot of the ball or complete catch. The NFL needs to do a better job at training their referees to be able to officiate a game.
Or reprimanding them if they make mistakes like that. Now, again, it's kind of tough. When you watch that play full speed, it looked a little egregious, and the helmet-to-helmet certainly was probably, in my mind, the biggest part of it. But full speed, I think that we are so used to watching everything in slow-mo that life does not go in slow-mo, and you almost feel bad for these refs because, yes, did they blow the call? Sure. But in a grand sense, everything's in full speed. The game is so fast. It's so tough to make judgment calls on plays like that.
Yes.
So.
I just think it's funny how refs can make great calls, like for example, like catches in the back of the end zone, catches on the sideline. No one says anything about that, but the minute the ref messes up one play, like you said, it's so fast. The refs are getting fined, the NFL's getting sued.
And honestly, some of those refs have received death threats this week. I mean, people take their football very seriously, and if a team was wronged, I mean, to me, it was such a big play, end of the game. Of course, it's going to be a high leverage situation, but there does have to be, in my mind, and I'm just kind of saying some of the things I heard on PTI this week with Tony and Mike. Maybe just make it in the fourth quarter, the last 2 minutes, pass interference can be reviewed by challenge or something like that. And that was Tony's point. Like, we're in the last 2 minutes of the NFC Championship game. There needs to be some review on a play like that. So maybe there's some creative things the competition committee could do in the NFL to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because this is terrible.
Well, my whole thing is I try not to complain about officials. Imagine if I was in their shoes. I mean, it's not fun. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. So, I mean, who am I to judge a person for trying to do their job?
And another interesting thing is about the NFL refs is most of these guys work other jobs. This isn't even their full-time job. Now, that is changing, and they're trying to bring a lot more of them on for full-time and work with the league and some rules. But I think the one thing about this play, though, that a lot of people are not considering is the Rams came back. And yes, should they have? Probably not. But even at the end of the day, the Saints still kicked a field goal. Rams still had to go down the field and score. Even at worst case scenario, they still had the lead after all of that, but couldn't stop the Rams. Before we get into some of the late game heroics for the Rams, what happened with Todd Gurley? Basically, I'd say a fair shot. Now, Patrick Mahomes probably wins the MVP of the league, but Gurley's going to be top 3 at worst. What happened with Gurley?
Just been reading up on things about, because I'm just as interested as what happened to Gurley as well. After talking to Brian and stuff, there has been news that he did have a slight injury towards the end of the season.
Well, yeah, he didn't play the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it could still be nagging at him and lingering. And ultimately, it's up to Sean McVay if he wants to play him or not. And with Gurley being such a young, talented player, if I was the coach, I wouldn't want to risk his career. I mean, you do have a good backup in C.J. Anderson. C.J. Anderson, against the Cowboys, he had over 100 yards. Against the Saints, he probably had over 100 yards.
They both did, and C.J. Anderson played phenomenal. Like, he was averaging so many yards a carry.
Yeah, so
and what's even more crazy about C.J. Anderson is he was cut by 2 other teams this year before he even ended up with the Rams, and now he's ending up saving their season. So congratulations go out to the Rams. Jared Goff looks like the real deal. Brandon Cooks had a big day. C.J. Anderson had a big day. They definitely miss Cooper Kupp. I think a lot of people forget that Kupp was such a major part of their offense, and obviously he will not be a part of the Super Bowl team. We will talk a little bit more about the Rams when we get to our Super Bowl picks. The second game, Chiefs and Patriots. This was a pretty interesting game too, but I want to start off with the very beginning of the game. Chiefs win the toss, defer. Now, this is something that's become more en vogue ever since Bill Belichick has taken over. Often, if they win the toss, they defer. But if you're Andy Reid and you're at home and you have the MVP of the league, why do you defer?
And I think that was a mistake on their part because Tom Brady is a phenomenal quarterback in the playoffs if you look at his playoff stats. Despite all the help he gets from the league,
Well, yes,
I completely agree with that statement,
You
Parker.
could certainly argue, but I just, to me, I don't understand why the Chiefs didn't take the ball and go down the field. Because basically they weren't able to get anything going in the first half. In fact, when you were sitting there at halftime of that game, you're like, what are we watching here? This is not the Patrick Mahomes we know. This Tyreek Hill basically did nothing. Damian Williams carried them. Kelsey had a couple huge drops. I mean, I was very surprised by how the Chiefs showed up. Now, did they make it a game? Of course they did.
I mean, I'm just going back to what you were saying. I would have did the same thing. I would have deferred.
I'm
all into that. Wait until the second half, getting a feel of the first half, seeing how everything goes, and then go into the second half with the ball.
And again, that's, to me, that's a judgment call, but I'm not giving Brady the ball. If you're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, okay, I'll defer. I'll let them, go 3 and out and punt. But this is not the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the New England Patriots, who have been to now 9 Super Bowls in the Tom Brady era. So I do think that, again, Andy Reid outcoached in that particular instance. It's also not helpful that the Patriots win the toss in overtime, go right down the field, and score a touchdown.
What's your opinion of the overtime rule?
Boy, that's a big question. So I don't necessarily like the college rules.
You don't like the call?
Oh, I actually like the college rule.
It makes for fun viewing, but I don't, because basically it can go on forever. I mean, there's really no end in sight. Now, I understand at certain points they have to start going for 2 and things like that. I don't like that. Should a team get a shot in overtime? No. Because, look, if you win the toss, then it's your defense's job to stop them from scoring a touchdown. You get the ball back if you can hold them to a field goal. If you can just stop them from scoring a touchdown. I don't know. I don't believe that the overtime rules are going to continually to evolve on the short term. Long term, sure. But on the short term, they've already made some pretty significant changes to overtime rules recently, and I just don't see it going forward. So very interesting how Patrick Mahomes played. They definitely have a bright future. But one more thing before we move on to the Super Bowl, just a couple loose ends to tie up from the championship games. Drew Brees.
One more season.
What's his future?
Oh, he's coming back. He already announced he plans on returning that season.
And I also read something today that Adam Vinatieri is going to come back for another season.
Adam,
So is Larry
24.
Fitzgerald.
So we do have some people. So I've already been hearing some rumblings out of the Saints. Now, the Saints historically over the past decade have been one of the worst teams. I don't know if you guys know this, in terms of salary cap. They are one of those teams that there's a lot of very interesting rules about the salary cap, that it has to do a lot of what you've spent over the last few years, and you can go over the cap in certain years, but then you have to be under the cap in future years, and if you're under the cap, you can credit that to the following year, and the Saints have basically just been playing catch-up for years. But one thing I've heard that seems interesting, and I'm going to go to Parker on this one, I've already heard rumors of the Saints acquiring Antonio Brown. What kind of fit would Antonio Brown be with the Saints?
He would be good to their offense, but I'm going to say this. I read a report today that the Steelers and Antonio Brown are talking, and I do not personally think he is leaving Pittsburgh.
And I read Instagram today,
Did
and
you
I
see
think
his Instagram?
He's going to San Francisco. He wants to go to San Francisco.
I've seen that too, but when it comes down to it, the Steelers would be, if you think about it, would be dumb to get rid of Antonio Brown. You're already losing Le'Veon Bell, who actually wants to go to Miami and play.
Well, I've heard, can they afford him? Probably not. He's already said that he wants to go to Indy.
That's where I think he's
Then
going.
he says he wants to go play. Well, the Jets actually have the most cap space. Well, I think it's Jets and Colts are the top 2. So those are going to be the people
I would
who
go
are,
to the Colts.
Why wouldn't you?
Exactly. Why? I don't know why.
With the way they've improved, I think it would be
Instagram
amazing.
and Twitter don't phase me on. I think he's just
he put it up though. That's the
he
thing.
did, but I don't think he's leaving Pittsburgh. I personally don't think, despite of what all was being said. If he goes to the 49ers, good for him.
Oh,
the
that's
Steelers,
great.
the
That's a great
Steelers,
fit.
the Steelers have a history of building wide receivers.
What makes
so
anybody?
I'm not worried.
But doesn't Brown at this point in his career? He's in his 30s. He's probably got a handful of years left. Wouldn't you want to go to a team that's closer? While the Niners played well this year, Kittle emerged. What makes you think that, yes, Jimmy G played well at the end of last season, but Jimmy G only has less than 10 NFL games under his belt? What makes you think that the Niners are ready to step right up into the Super Bowl conversation for Brown to go there? If Brown would go to a New Orleans Saints, And doesn't Brown only have one more year left on his contract?
No, Antonio has like 2 or 3 years left because they said if Pittsburgh trades him, it's actually going to take a hit on their salary cap.
Well, yes, but they do get a credit from Le'Veon Bell for 2018 since he didn't play on the roster, so that offsets some of that.
I think we're forgetting, though, that Des Bryant is still kind of there at the New Orleans Saints.
1-year deal. It's up to them.
Michael Thomas, Des Bryant, Antonio Brown.
The biggest problem with the Saints was their lack of a 2 receiver. I mean, basically, Kamara was their number 2 receiver. They were slotting him out. Obviously, he catches a lot out of the backfield, but he was playing the slot a lot. They have to address this position, and frankly, there's really no quality free agent wide receivers out there. Why wouldn't the Saints roll the dice? If you have one more year with Breeze, go after Brown. And I'll tell you what, when the Steelers were talking about trading him, they were looking for a first. You give a first and maybe this year's first, which is a 30 or 28 or 29, give him that and maybe give him a third in 2019. That might be enough to get Brown. Wouldn't you, if you're the Saints, roll the dice on a number 30 pick and then maybe a third-round pick for next year to get one of a future Hall of Fame wide receiver to go opposite Michael Thomas? Could you imagine Michael Thomas and Antonio Brown, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara? Remember, Mark Ingram is a free agent. But I also think that the Saints have to address their tight end situation.
Yeah.
Ben Watson actually had...
He's retiring.
Well, he had appendicitis and couldn't play in the championship game, and they haven't had basically a good tight end since Jimmy Graham. So one more thing. What about the Chiefs? The Chiefs played well. It's a couple phantom calls. The roughing the passer was unbelievably egregious. That really changed the entire game. But overall, the Chiefs' defense played okay.
Yeah, I mean,
their offense played well. What do we see for the future with the Chiefs? I mean, they have Tyreek Hill, they have Kelsey, but no Kareem Hunt. Although Damian Williams did step in, he probably starts there next year, unless they would get someone like Bell, which maybe they're in the running for a guy like that.
I mean, if they are able to pull that off, that's great. Because, I mean, they owe a lot of money to a lot of people. I mean, Justin Houston on the defense is owed a lot of money.
I don't know that he's back.
But, I mean, still, you got that money. I mean, the salary cap is a weird thing. Eric Berry. Money.
And he's still, not only is Eric Berry, he's still battling coming back from Achilles injury. He injured it, missed a whole season, missed half of this season, and then even missed one of the playoff games against the Colts, if I'm not mistaken.
And then they owe money to Sammy Watkins. So, I mean,
Watkins actually turned it on.
Yeah, he wasn't a bad player on their team.
He had a foot injury as well, so hopefully maybe he can come back next year and Watkins and Hill. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
And Conley. Forgetting Conley.
Yeah, Conley and
Chris
of course
Conley,
and
then,
of course Kelsey.
I like Demetrius Harris on that team too. He's very good. They just fired a defensive coordinator. So I mean, they're looking.
They couldn't really stop anyone this whole season, so you can't really blame them.
A big question mark is if D Ford's coming back. I mean, he was the one that had the offsides, but he's their big free agent.
Well, and they can use the franchise tag, and I read immediately after that game that that's in play.
They need to look in the market for cornerbacks.
And I'm sure that's probably where their draft's going to go. And who knows? Maybe they trade one of those players to get some more draft capital because I think they need it.
My guy Brett is going to be on the draft board a lot, the GM from the Chiefs.
So before we move on to the Super Bowl, gentlemen, I did want to just bring a couple fantasy awards for the season, since obviously we are a fantasy podcast. I wanted to start off with the fantasy MVP. And guys, I think that, or maybe I hope that we can all agree, Patrick Mahomes has to be the fantasy MVP. I don't know that there's any question. I mean, he was a guy that was basically being drafted as a backup quarterback, ended up by far being the number one scorer by 30 points in ESPN leagues, with 417 points over Saquon Barkley at 385. I don't know that there's anybody that would argue Mahomes. Outside of Mahomes, though, I want everyone to give me one player that's a fantasy MVP. And by this, I don't necessarily mean somebody drafted in the first round. Think of people that might have been second round and provided you just a ton of value on your return. I'm going to start with Parker. Parker, who do you think would fit as sort of the fantasy 1B MVP? Because I think we're all in agreement Patrick Mahomes is the 1A.
From my fantasies perspective, out of all, I will either go with Ebron or Philip Lindsay.
I think those are two really good nominees there, Parker. Neither of them were drafted. In fact, in Denver, it wasn't even Lindsey that was drafted. It was Freeman, and basically Freeman didn't even see the field after a few weeks. Ebron's a little different. He might have been drafted, but I think a lot of people, myself included, if you listen back to our preseason podcast back in August, Jack Doyle was supposed to be the guy there.
Exactly.
And Ebron had, an incredible amount of touchdowns. In fact, this is crazy. Other than Antonio Brown's 15 touchdowns, Eric Ebron had 13 touchdowns this season. He only had 66 for 750, but 13 touchdowns, guys. That's pretty incredible and probably help win you some weeks, Parker. So I love that. Dylan, who would you give your Fantasy 1B MVP to?
Michael Thomas.
There are, and of course, we're going to get to our way too early 2019 top 20. I have him as the number two wide receiver off the board. With Breeze coming back, his talent, Thomas is amazing. I mean, they're double and triple teaming him, and he's still getting the ball. Michael Thomas, maybe a first-round pick this year, but I still think that he provided you enough value to be in this conversation. So I would certainly, that's another wonderful nominee. Brian?
All right. I decided I didn't even have this guy, nor that I said I wouldn't draft him. I'm taking Christian McCaffrey.
So, Brian, I'm going to be full disclosure here. This is also my pick because I was against McCaffrey. In fact, early in the season when we had these preseason podcasts, I specifically said I didn't want Christian McCaffrey. I didn't have him in any leagues. But, I mean, the guy had an unbelievable season. Over 1,000 yards rushing, over 100 catches, over, very, very close, flirted with 2,000 all-purpose yards. 124 targets, which is unbelievable for a running back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he probably could have got to the 2,000 all-purpose yards, but they sat him week 17.
Yes.
He did have a couple plays, but he didn't do much week 17. So, to me, Christian McCaffrey really, really impressed me. He definitely wasn't a first-round pick. He's probably second or third. I would put him right up there, too.
I mean, Devin Funchess and the whole receiving core went down this season. I mean, DJ Moore, Funchess, Greg Olsen was hurt most of the season. Cam was injured as well, so...
Now, here's my question. Is he going to be your go-to guy next season with Cam going underneath surgery and possibly missing next season?
I'd say that's a situation where we have to assume...
You have to wait till the day of your draft to decide
We
that
have to
almost.
assume at this point that Cam's going to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not been really much indication that says that he's going to miss any games. Might he miss preseason? It's possible. So Brian stole my thunder there, but the one person that I did want to bring up that a lot of people really didn't think about in drafts in the first round is Davante Adams.
Yeah.
And he's another guy I did not have in any leagues, but Davante Adams ended up the season in the top 10 in terms of scoring, 111 catches,
That's
1386 and 13 touchdowns. Really an incredible season. And to see Aaron Rodgers was basically hurt in that first game, and even with Rodgers played most of the games, but even with different quarterbacks in and out, Rodgers really a subpar season to be polite. Davante Adams still rocking and rolling. And here's one stat that I'd like to share with you guys about Davante Adams. Outside of Week 17 where he did not play, Davante Adams' lowest point production the entire season was 16 points.
Can't complain with that.
16 points was the lowest he had all year outside of that Week 17. So I think that is something to be said for. You need to take some risks on some high upside guys, but you also need people like Davante Adams who are locked in 16 to 25 points every single week if you want to win your league.
And I think that'll be good about the preseason. We'll get to see what kind of offense they're running now in Green Bay with the new addition.
And one final fantasy MVP candidate, I would say, is Andrew Luck.
Yeah, why not?
Andrew Luck was going off the board anywhere from QB 8 to 10, and I've seen rankings already that have Luck at QB 2 for next season. So Andrew Luck back at it in points. He ended up being 5. I'm all in on Andrew Luck. He had a couple of poor games, but overall, considering what he's gone through, I think he's done very well. Well, gentlemen, we're into our last segment here in the first half of the podcast, and we have about 5 minutes. So we have an epic Super Bowl matchup, Patriots and Rams, coming up for the Super Bowl. So we're going to go around, and I'd like a winner and I'd like a score. And the how about this? The winner of this particular exercise, maybe we can have him have the first pick in next year's draft.
All right, fine with me.
All right.
I'm the commissioner anyway, so.
Brian, I want to hear a score and I want to hear a winner.
Well, I said it before and I'll say it again. New England wins 28-17. Edelman wins the MVP.
All right, Dylan.
Rams beat the Patriots 31-28.
And Parker.
Rams 38-31. Goff your MVP or Aaron Donald your MVP?
I had actually picked Rams 31-28, but just for the sake of this, we'll call it Rams 34, Pats 31 will be mine. So here's where I'm at. Brian, you're the only one to take the Patriots. What is it about the Patriots that you think allows them to win this ball game?
There's one simple person that will define the Patriots winning the Super Bowl.
Roger Goodell.
And that man...
Goodell doesn't want the Patriots to win.
Exactly.
Goodell
That's
hates
what makes
the
no
Patriots.
sense. They keep saying that Goodell has something to do. He hates Robert Kraft. He hates Bill Belichick, and he hates Tom Brady.
Okay, the NFL referees want them to win.
Why? They're...
Because they're getting paid extra by the
There's
Patriots.
video evidence in the last game. A ref said to Brady, "I got you. Don't worry."
I saw that, but that's not in context.
I know,
we,
right?
I guess as fans, we have to hope that that's not the case. Might it be the case? Who knows? I don't know if we'll ever know.
The Tuck rule, Deflate Gate, spying on other teams' practices.
Brady was suspended for 4 games for something that realistically makes no difference. In the first half of the game, he was terrible. When the proper ball was in, he went off. So it didn't even help him. So the whole Deflategate thing,
like this whole thing,
I think was ridiculous. And Brady actually took it on the chin. And I'm not a Brady fan. He took it on the chin and he took the 4 games. So
Hey, gives them something to complain about, though. Let's be honest.
So okay, Dylan, what is it about the Rams that you think allows them to win this game, especially with the arguable one of the top 3 players in the league, Todd Gurley, doing nothing in the championship game?
I think the key thing to stopping the Patriots is stopping that offense. If you can keep Tom Brady off the field, like in the Chiefs game, they controlled time of possession. It was not even close. If you can keep Tom Brady off the field for a good amount of time, not allow him to drive down the field, and I think with the Rams' defense, especially their interior rush, getting to Tom Brady would be key, which is why I think the Rams have it. Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh. They also have Marcus Peters, Roby Coleman. They have Aqib Talib, Sam Shields, LaMarcus Joyner. Like their defense is just stacked with talent. And on offense, Jared Goff, he can keep the Rams on the field if he really wants to, especially with Todd Gurley if he's in, CJ Anderson, Robert Woods.
Cooks had a huge game against the Chiefs.
And Cooks played for the Patriots.
Against the Saints.
Cooks played for the Patriots too, so he knows what kind of offense they run. He knows what kind of defense they run too. You can't tell me Bill Belichick's old self can change things up.
Well, Patricia's not there anymore, so there is a new defensive coordinator from last season.
Very true.
But their defense isn't as good as it was when Patricia was there.
You got to give them credit, the New England Patriots. This is by far their worst team to make the Super Bowl. You can't deny that. Everyone is...
And what's interesting about that, I don't know if I necessarily agree with you for the simple fact that short of a miracle play in Miami, they're the number 1 seed coming out of the AFC.
Yeah.
So how can you say that
It
a
is
number 1 seeded Patriots
even-
team is the worst one they've ever had?
Statistically and by the personnel, that is by far their worst team.
Defensively maybe, but offensively, I
That
don't
offensive
agree with
line,
that.
you can't stop that offensive line.
So, all right, well, we have 3 of us are taking the Rams, and 1 of us is taking the Patriots. So pretty much either way, Brian, if the Patriots win, you're going to win this little
That's fine.
bet. But we've got
Ezekiel Elliott's coming to Brian.
we've got some interesting scores. So we will follow up with you when we come back in August of next year, if we're all still around. All right, we're going to take a quick break, everyone. We will be back with a look to 2019. We're going to talk about our top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and we'll have a way too early top 20. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is Dylan Kleintop, and you are listening to the Fantasy Football Strategy Guide.
We are are back with the Fantasy Football Strategy Guide. We're here with Brian Christiana, Dylan Kleintop, and Parker Rose. We are going to, so we put a little bow on the 2018 season, short of one announcement. For those of you who are following along with the league that we had, I will let you know that I am the champion. I ended up steamrolling through the playoffs, and even though my two best players, Todd Gurley and Antonio Brown, did not play Week 17, Gurley not playing 16 or 17, I still won by over 100 points. Brian made the playoffs, couldn't quite get out of the first round, but Dylan and Parker, not quite a good season, but hey, at least you guys hung in there, and we'll see what happens next year. So we'll continue that. All right, well, we're going to start off. We're going to talk quarterbacks. We're going to talk running backs, wide receivers, and then we're going to talk about our top 20 going forward into next year. So if we start off with quarterbacks, let's hear, I'm going to go around, let's hear your top 5 quarterbacks from 1 to 5. Brian?
All right, well, I put everyone put the same guy, I'm pretty sure, at number 1, Patrick.
I agree with that
All
statement.
right, so number 2, I put Drew Brees. 3, I put Cam. 4, I put probably the most quiet quarterback I think all season was Russell Wilson. And then number 5, I had Deshaun Watson.
Interesting. Dylan?
Going into 2019, number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, I have Jared Goff. Number 3, this one's going to surprise you, Baker Mayfield. Number 4, Drew Brees. And number 5, I have Andrew Luck.
Parker?
Going to 2019, just like everybody else, Patrick Mahomes number 1, Drew Brees 2. Didn't hear this name at 3, Phillip Rivers. I feel like he's going to have another good season. Jared Goff at 4, and Andrew Luck at 5.
And, of course, I start with Mahomes. No one named this person, former number 1 fantasy quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Dak.
Drew Brees, Andrew Luck, and Matt Ryan, who surprisingly had
statistically and fantasy-wise.
Statistically, fantasy-wise, really had an amazing season. 35, so he actually was second in points with 355, nearly 5,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, only 7 picks, did have 3 rushing touchdowns, and had a receiving touchdown too, which maybe kind of throws that off a little bit. But Matt Ryan quietly is a top 5 quarterback for me. Now here's the second question, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more in a top 20. Where do you draft Mahomes? Because while he's obviously great, no quarterback in probably the last 25 years has ever repeated as number 1 in back-to-back years. So if history teaches us anything, Mahomes is going to regress, and he can regress quite a bit and still come back and still be the number 1 quarterback. But how early are you taking a quarterback here? Typically, most times, quarterbacks aren't taken in the first couple of rounds.
I would wait second or third on him, not going to lie.
Do you think he's there in the second or third round, or do you think someone else pulls the trigger in the first?
There's always that one person that takes a quarterback in the first round. We know that.
So do you think that you're going to have Mahomes on any teams if you're not ready to take him in the first round?
And I guess not.
Where would you take Mahomes?
I'd wait till the 4th or 5th round. I mean, obviously, like he said, there's always that one person that takes a quarterback in the first round.
Well, what's interesting is I'm just going to read down some of the quarterbacks here. Okay, this is just points. Mahomes, Ryan, Roethlisberger. If you look at the rankings of Roethlisberger, most people don't have Roethlisberger even in the top 10.
I'm taking Russell Wilson.
And
honestly.
so Russell Wilson was down at like 10.
And that's fine. I mean,
Dak at 11, Rivers at 12, Cousins, Newton, Brady, Trubisky, Baker Mayfield. You're talking down mid-15s. So you're talking about the difference between... Okay, so here's a scenario I can share with you. Outside of Mahomes, the difference between Drew Brees at number 9 and Matt Ryan number 2 is 50 points. Now that, is a lot, but if on a week-to-week basis, you're talking about 2 points. So you could wait like 5 rounds on a quarterback and have a 2-point differential, whereas if you wait 5 rounds on a running back, the differences are going to be night and day.
I want to bring up a point we talked about earlier. If, let's say Antonio Brown does go to New Orleans, is Drew Brees worth going in the first round then? Maybe.
I don't know. For me, I'm not taking a quarterback in the first 2 rounds.
Okay.
I'm always going running back, wide receiver, or wide receiver, running back in the first 2 rounds.
I agree.
I really just can't see Mahomes as a first round. And by that rationale, Brian, I'm not going to have him in any team because I'm not going to pull the trigger and somebody will.
Next year, I'm going to do that again. Well, our league, our league was the one where you could trade draft picks. I'm gonna do that again next year. I think that was pretty cool and was pretty smart. I think.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
got screwed out of a draft pick because of it.
No one ever even asked me if I wanted to trade any draft picks. You guys were just trading yourself.
Dylan and Parker made a trade,
And I didn't even get another draft pick. I got screwed out of another draft pick.
Well, that's the commissioner's fault.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
It's the commissioner's responsibility to make sure everybody trades appropriately.
And that's why I went 3-10.
I don't know if that's the only reason.
Yeah, there we go.
But no, I look. I love Mahomes. He's an electric player. He's a young guy. He's amazing. He's a shooting star. But if you mean to tell me that I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes in the first round, or I can get Aaron Rodgers in the fifth, I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers in the fifth 100 times out of 100. Now, he's hurt last year, had a down year. I'm going to probably have Rodgers in a ton of leagues because if I see Rodgers in the fourth or fifth round, I'm taking him.
I'm taking Dak too. Not going to lie.
So to me, quarterback is a much deeper position. I'm probably not going to have Mahomes. All right, moving on. We're going to talk top 10 running backs. So let's hear your top 10, and then I'll try to pick out some from each and ask you some questions about. We're going to go back the other way. We'll start with Parker.
All right, I got Barkley at 1. I got Zeke at 2. Gurley at 3. I got Chris Carson at 4. James Conner at 5. Alvin Kamara at 6. I feel like David Johnson's going to turn his season around, so I have him at 7. Some people may not have this guy in their top 10. I have Nick Chubb at 8, Joe Mixon at 9, and Christian McCaffrey at 10.
Low on McCaffrey there. What are your concerns with McCaffrey? Because at this point, a number 10 running back's probably third or fourth round.
I just filled him in at 10. I didn't do Pacific order. I just kind of just put him down as name.
Well, and again, back to the original argument is he's a small guy. How durable is he going to be? McCaffrey's a guy that I'd probably roll the dice on in a redraft league, but I don't know if I'd keep him or I'd probably try to trade him. I just don't know if, especially the direction the Panthers are going at this point. But then again, who else do they have? Literally no one.
That offense, we were talking the receiver core. I mean, I think DJ Moore's going to be there, but I think he's going to grow. But otherwise, there's nothing much there.
Chris Carson. Parker.
I like that, Parker. I really do.
Tell me about Carson. I think the only knock on Carson is in PPR leagues, which many of us play, he doesn't catch a whole lot out of the backfield. I want to take a look here. Chris Carson, only 20 catches on the season. In fact, one of the lowest totals of running backs with a major share. In fact, Adrian Peterson, who has bricks for hands, caught 20 catches last year. Chris Carson, that's my only pause. I do like Carson. I had him in a lot of leagues. 1,151 yards and 9 touchdowns.
I put Chris Carson up there because of his rushing. He's
over 1,000 yards. That was impressive.
He is an old school back known for rushing the ball.
He had some injury problems, too. He had a hip issue early in the season. So if he can stay healthy, I like Chris Carson there. All right, Dylan, top 10?
At 1, I have Gurley. 2, I have Saquon Barkley. 3, Christian McCaffrey. 4, Alvin Kamara. 5, I have Ezekiel Elliott. 6, James Conner. 7, Melvin Gordon. 8, James White. 9, Joe Mixon. And 10, Nick Chubb.
I like that there. You definitely, both of you were both very high on Barkley, and I like Barkley. I'm a Penn State guy. I love what he does. My problem is Eli Manning. Are they really rolling out with Eli Manning
Kyler
again?
Murray. He's going to Giant.
Or I've
Giants.
Heard Haskins from Ohio State.
Dwayne.
In a lot of mocks, I've seen that. But either way, are either of those players walking out there day one and starting over Eli Manning? Probably not. That's my concern. Is I just don't think the Giants are that good. And what Barkley did was incredible this year. He got a lot of touches.
I think we brought this up before. The O-line is the problem in New York. I mean, Eric Flowers, thankfully he's gone. I mean, they drafted Will Hernandez last season. So he's going to develop, but that offensive line is the problem. Eli gets hit too much. And, I mean, if they can hold him, Eli's proven that he can play.
Just week 1 alone, he got knocked around.
I just think that they're putting they don't have anybody to back him up.
No.
They have no one to give him a break. They're running him into the ground, and they have no passing offense.
Odell was hurt the second half of the season.
What's new? I just don't. He's an injury candidate for me, and I probably won't have him unless he falls to like the end of the first round.
Yeah.
Brian, top 10 running backs for 2019.
All right, I have Gurley at 1. I had Zeke at 2. Barkley at 3. Melvin Gordon 4. Kamara at 5. McCaffrey at 6. 7, I had Connor. 8, Mixon. 9, David Johnson. I had Kareem Hunt at 10.
Kareem Hunt, someone I do want to bring up, and I actually had him on my list. What do we make of Kareem Hunt? There's already been teams out there saying they're going to at least consider bringing him in. He's already served 5 games of a suspension, and the typical domestic violence suspension in the NFL is 6 games. So if they go by that, and he's suspended for 1 game, he's got 15 games. Everybody forgets he was literally right there with Todd Gurley when Hunt went out. I guess it depends where he lands.
And also, they didn't announce his suspension, though, at all. They just said he's on that commissioner's exempt list.
Right, which serves, if history continues and the exempt list continues to be the function that it is actually kind of like they're suspended, but they haven't made any kind of decisions yet.
Yeah.
So he actually has to petition the league to be reinstated. That's when they have this hearing to decide if he's going to be reinstated, how long a suspension is. But from everything I've heard and the reporting that I've heard through ESPN and other sources, that 5 games should be considered time served, if you will. I think Kareem Hunt,
I mean, why not? I think it should. I mean, hey, the player, his reputation is really shot right now. He's missed. He said 5 games. They should definitely put that into consideration. He should only have to. I agree with what you're saying. 1 game would be good because then now carry over. Let him get back on the field.
What teams might be interested in Kareem Hunt? I mean, maybe a better question is what teams wouldn't be interested in Kareem Hunt?
I would definitely say you'd have to put the Bears in there. You would probably say, I mean, if Pittsburgh really likes James Conner, he could maybe go there. The Jets is a possibility. I mean, I don't know what's up with the Bills with LaShawn McCoy. So, I mean, there's several options for him. As a local guy, I hope not, but I mean, it is looking like he is going to be done soon.
I'm just going to go through mine real quick, and I do think that it's going to be interesting where Kareem Hunt lands. I think he's got to be a top 10. I mean, if he's only suspended for 1 game, how he's not a top 10 running back?
I would take him in the second, third round.
I would too. All right, I have, of course, Gurley, Zeke, Christian McCaffrey, 3, Kamara, 4. Somebody no one said, this kind of bugs me, Le'Veon Bell. How's Le'Veon Bell not in any of your top 10?
I forgot about Le'Veon Bell.
Maybe it's just because we don't know where he is. But I'm telling you right now, if he goes to the Colts, you mean to tell me he's not a top 5 running back?
The only reason why he's not in my top 10 is I don't know what condition he's in. Do we know what condition is he in? And will you start?
That's a very good point. And he took a year off.
Now, when you say that, I'm just asking for clarification. Like mentally, physically, or what kind of
physically?
Oh, physical. I'm sure he's still good.
Would you start? And for the stuff that Mac did for the Colts, you would put Bell over Mac? Because do you think it's not fair for Mac, who actually played good for the Colts?
This is a business. It doesn't matter who's happy and who's not.
Jets, I think, could use Bell. I think the Colts have the money for Bell. Whether they want to go after him, I don't know. Now the Dolphins, why he want to go play for the Dolphins?
That's where Nick Foles is going. I'm not going to lie to you. They're giving up on Ryan Tannehill.
They should.
Yeah,
I hated the pick when they made it.
I think that's where Nick Foles is going to go. There or Jack. I think he's going to Florida no matter what. One of the teams there.
I'm just surprised I didn't hear anybody with Le'Veon Bell in their top 10. And again, I admit to all of you, it does depend where he ends up. I'll give you that. But for me, I have a league where I can keep him for a first-round pick, and I'm keeping him unless he goes to a terrible team like the Dolphins. If he goes to the Dolphins, I'm not keeping him. Someone else can take him. All right, 6, I have Barkley. 7, Melvin Gordon. 8, Mixon. 9, David Johnson. Here's one no one had. The guy that actually won me the league and actually won me another league, Damian Williams. Even though he's no Kareem Hunt, he absolutely can catch the ball out of the backfield, can run between the tackles. I think in that offense, whoever the running back is. Now, will the Chiefs upgrade at running back? Yes. They're obviously not bringing Kareem Hunt back. Could Le'Veon Bell be a fit there? Do they have the money? And we were talking about their cap issues, Chiefs cap issues earlier. Do they have the money? But you know what? If they want to bring a player in, they're going to bring him in. I mean, they'll figure out a way.
I think Dylan brought up early, they need to worry about the secondary. That defense is where they have to put their priority on.
But Damian Williams has re-signed. He's going to at least have a shot at starting. And frankly, anybody that's starting in that offense needs to be a top 10 running back. I don't care if you're, digging up Barry Sanders. He could be a top 10 running back in this offense. It's that dynamic.
I mean, hey, there's a couple people we didn't name even that are, injury ridden this year. Devontae Freeman could still be something. Jay Ajayi was injured a lot.
I don't
You're
know.
not- you're not big-
I don't. It's not that I'm not big on him. I don't know that he's got a future. I'll tell you somebody who
Carry-on Johnson you need to look at.
Carry-on Johnson, Philip Lindsay, and no one said Derrick Henry, who really earned it. But see, this is the thing about Henry. They never gave him a shot. Now they give him a shot, and he goes bananas.
That Thursday
How
night
do you
game.
not give him a shot?
I drafted
going
him
forward?
I drafted him in the third, fourth round last year, and then that slow start he had, and then boom, that happens, and he's sitting on my bench. And
In a 3-week span, weeks 14, 15, 16, 238, 170, 84 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, and even had 93
and
in
the
week
thing
17.
And the thing is, no one would have ever thought of that.
He always had a talent. They had Deion Lewis.
DeMarco Murray was there before.
I'm telling you, Henry, he's going to go way up in draft boards.
I hope
And
so.
I think they should give him the ball.
I mean, he won the Heisman that year.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to go with the top 10 wide receivers for 2019.
For 2019, all right, I went with AB number 1 still. I mean, I'm going to like when he goes to San Francisco. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, they don't have anyone else except Kittle, so
So, hey, it'll be a
Keyword.
good Jimmy G.
If.
Tyreek Hill number 2. Number 3, Michael Thomas. 4, DeAndre Hopkins. Very good season.
led the league in receptions.
Yes. Devontae Adams. I put Juju in there as well. Robert Woods. I don't know what the Rams. I think that's going to be up in the air still because Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Brandon Cooks. Julio Jones. I'm very confident with him. Calvin Ridley's going to get much better. I think he'll slide into the number 2 slot over Mohamed Sanu. Adam Thielen, him and Diggs, they're both still solid. Mike Evans, but I want to bring up Amari Cooper. I like what I think the talent. I think that offense is gonna be much different, and it's gonna be much brighter.
How much different could it possibly be?
I mean, the O line is gonna be much better. Travis Frederick's coming back from that weird disease you could say he had. I think Blake Jarwin and that Schultz, the tight end, are gonna get better.
Michael
Gallup, especially with.
I was high on Gallup all season, and it wasn't until the playoffs that he even did anything.
I don't know.
He did not have more than 3 catches in a game all season.
And then I think Cole Beasley's gone.
Well, he came out this week and was talking about issues with the front office. I mean, Jerry doesn't like that. Brian, he had 5 catches against New Orleans and a 4, but 1 or 0 in 7 games.
I'm still
1 or 0
taking that.
I like Gallup.
I will take that any
They
day.
just didn't throw him the ball.
Yeah, and that when you have
2 touchdowns all season.
And that's the problem. 4 wide receivers who could probably start on most teams. I mean, Allen Hurns was the 4th wide receiver, and he would be a good number 2 or 3 on a lot of teams.
And good luck if he even makes it back last year.
And it's a
after that
shame.
Brutal injury. So, Dylan, top 10 wide receivers for 2019.
All right, at number 1, I have Tyreek Hill. Number 2, I have DeAndre Hopkins. 3, I have Julio Jones. 4, I have Michael Thomas. 5, Devontae Adams. 6, I have Juju. 7, Adam Thielen. At 8, I have Robert Woods. I have Antonio Brown at 9, and I have Mike Evans at 10.
Just think Brown's going to fall off because of age or maybe going to a different system?
Going to a different system. Like, if he goes to San Francisco, like you said, Jimmy G, he's proven
He's the
himself to a
savior.
point, but he's not proven himself enough. But they also don't have anyone there. It's all about.
But Jimmy G's smart enough to know, hey, I have Antonio Brown. I need to get him the ball.
oh,
I
yes.
just think Antonio Brown leaving the Steelers.
He's
as
also
much
in
as,
his 30s, too,
As much
though.
as I want him to leave the Steelers, sorry, Parker, I don't think it would be best if he left the Steelers.
If from fantasy purposes. Absolutely.
And for himself.
I agree with that statement, Dylan, 100%.
Parker, top 10 wide receivers 2019.
1, Tyreek Hill. 2, Juju Smith-Schuster. 3, DeAndre Hopkins. 4, Adam Thielen. 5, AB. 6, Michael Thomas. 7, a name I did not hear, T.Y. Hilton.
You'll
8,
hear it in my top 10.
8, Keenan Allen. 9, Robert Woods. 10, Julio Jones. And I have someone on the outskirts if he comes back from his injury and has a good season.
Odell Beckham.
No. A.J. Green.
Okay.
All right.
Odell will not even be in my top 15.
Is Andy Dalton still going to be a Bengal next year? Who knows what's going to happen?
They need to change that whole system out there. They got to start by firing Hugh Jackson and Marvin Lewis.
Hugh Jackson's already been fired.
And Marvin. They're both gone.
They needed a new coaching staff, and my mother, who's a Bengals fan, is very happy with that.
You know, I actually got to go to Cincinnati and see a game there. I'm going to tell you the most interesting thing I learned. Nowhere in the downtown area is open on Sundays when there's a Bengals game. It's like a ghost town.
Interesting fact.
Like we
Never
went
knew
there
that.
we weren't tailgating because it was cold, and we went there just to get something to eat. Nowhere was open.
So
We
you didn't
couldn't-
go? Did you go to a game though?
Yeah.
Who'd they play?
The Chargers. That's why we went, because Jackie is a Chargers fan.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, my top 10. I'm going with Antonio Brown, number 1. Michael Thomas, number 2. Julio Jones, 3. Although I probably won't draft Julio Jones.
Calvin Ridley.
Foot issues. He's 1 year older, although if I'm pro Ryan, I'd probably be pro Jones, so you'd have to see DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams. I'm the third person that had Juju at 6. I think he's going to step up. This is assuming that Brown leaves. Tyreek Hill, I did put Beckham in the top 10. I'm not confident about that. I did put Thielen in the top 10. I'm not confident about that. Kirk Cousins up and down. Thielen down the stretch, really disappointed. T.Y. Hilton at 10. I think Hilton really had an incredible season and really helped me out.
Between him and Ebron, Andrew Luck really had those two as good threats.
So no one else put Robert Woods? I'm just asking.
I have
Oh, you
Robert
don't?
Woods at
Robert
9.
Woods.
Oh, okay.
We
I have him at 8.
we have some Woods. I don't think anyone other than me put Beckham in there.
I don't think anyone else besides Parker put Keenan Allen either.
And again, Allen is a great. He made some amazing catches down the stretch. Really disappointing the Chargers, how they showed up in Baltimore.
Yeah.
I was very
Same
disappointed.
in New England, too.
So
Well, the first half they started slow, but then the second half they started to pick up. I mean, going up to Foxborough, what happens?
well, yeah, and that game was just a disaster from the beginning. I mean, they barely got by the Ravens and got decimated by the Patriots. And that's almost unfair, though. They were, 11-5 or 12-4?
Yeah.
And they're the 5 seed? I mean, it's really kind of ridiculous. So,
That's what the NBA adjusted a few years back, Miller. I didn't know if you knew this or
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
all right, well, we are coming down to our final 5 minutes, so we are going to take a quick look at how our top 20 is going to shake up. For just at the beginning, let's talk top 5, and then from there in our last minute, we're going to talk about maybe some surprises that we see in our 2019 top 20. Parker, who's your top 5 for 2019?
I got Mahomes, Barkley, Zeke, AB, and Gurley.
So, number 1 pick. Parker has number 1 pick. You're taking Mahomes.
Not as a number 1 pick. I'm more on put the the quarterback in the 4th or 5th round, because say if Patrick Mahomes does Gurley, there are still a lot of talented quarterbacks in that fantasy draft that you could take from.
But I do think that it's interesting to talk about. I think this is the first time in a long time where a quarterback is really up in that echelon of a first round, potentially first, second round pick.
I still look at it as running backs, wide receivers give you a lot of those points because of the quarterbacks.
And the data is there to prove that, but Patrick Mahomes is much different than any quarterback that we're dealing
That
with.
is a good point you make. That is true.
Top 5 for Dylan.
Just like Parker, at 1 I have Patrick Mahomes. 2 I have Gurley. 3 I have Tyreek Hill. 4 I have Saquon Barkley. And 5 I have Christian McCaffrey.
I like that McCaffrey pickup there. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to pull a trigger on him in next year's draft. Brian, top 5?
I had Zeke going 1, Saquon 2, Gurley 3, 4 AB, and 5 I went with Alvin.
And I like Kamara, and I'll tell you, I do have him at 6. The thing about Kamara is, what do the Saints do with Ingram? Do they bring
think he's
Ingram
gone.
back? If not, Kamara is not a lead back. Could he be in the Christian McCaffrey role? Yes, but he's too valuable to them, and if they don't improve their wide receiving core, they need to bring in a second back to help Kamara.
Maybe that's where LaShawn McCoy comes in. I mean, you said veteran. I know you're not a fan.
He's done. He's done. I mean, my personal preferences on him aside, he's done. Did you watch him this whole season in Buffalo?
I mean, that's being a number 1 back.
He
could be a number 2, I believe. Just like what
He
he could do what Frank Gore did in Miami.
okay, but there's a big difference, and it's that McCoy has a much bigger ego than Frank Gore does. McCoy, listen to this, guys. It's 161 carries, 514 yards, only 34 catches. Pretty bad season. All right, I have Todd Gurley, Zeke Elliott, Antonio Brown. I have Christian McCaffrey at 4 and Michael Thomas at 5. All right, last thing. I want to hear one player, one ranking that's going to be a big surprise for 2019. Parker.
Big surprise for 2019. I think Joe Mixon's going to go off next season.
He had a great run down the stretch. I really think it's just dependent on the rest of their offense. If Dalton's back, Green's back healthy, Joe Ross has stepped up a little bit, maybe Mixon can have a big workload.
Because even when Dalton was healthy and so was AJ Green, he was still getting his share of the ball. Like, touchdowns, 100-yard games, I'm a fan of Joe Mixon, even though I don't like the Bengals. I'm a fan of Joe Mixon.
Personally, I wouldn't say he's the best dude, but fantasy, yeah, I agree. Dylan, a surprise in your top 20.
All right. I'm a big fan of this player. I actually put him as my second-rated quarterback in the top 20, and that's Baker Mayfield.
Why are you so high on him?
He might be a little cocky, but look at what he did with the Browns. He brought them from a team that everyone knows they're going to beat when they play against to a team possibly contending for the playoffs next year.
He just needs to develop because he did throw a lot of picks though in his starts. But if he develops, I do agree with Dylan. I think he's going to be a good quarterback for that team.
Here's the thing about the Browns. They are in the top of money to spend for salary cap purposes. So they can do an unbelievable amount of upgrades at skill positions. They can bring in another running back. They definitely need another wide receiver. Yes, they have Callaway and they have Landry and Njoku to a point. They need to bring in another wide receiver. Again, the wide receiver free agent crop this year is almost non-existent. So maybe they upgrade on the defense or the offensive line.
The Browns were in AB's equation too. The Browns were eyeballing AB.
Who isn't it? I mean, what team wouldn't be? Honestly, he's one of the best receivers in the league.
Probably Dallas.
Well, that's a different story. Brian, a surprise player as we get out of here.
Okay, this is very unusual, I say this. Zach Ertz from the Philadelphia Eagles.
Not necessarily a surprise, that high maybe, but he passed the record of...
I would take Zach Ertz on my team.
Well, Do you have Tom Brady in your top 20?
No, Tom Brady wasn't. We talked about this last time.
All right, we're almost out of here, so we can argue off air. Here's mine, and I have him at number 20, George Kittle, who set the receiving record for tight ends. I'm not the biggest Jimmy G fan, but what Kittle did this year won me some leagues, especially in leagues I drafted Gronk. That was the only reason I did well in some of these leagues that I drafted Gronk, because I had Kittle right. I didn't draft him, but I picked him up very early in the season, and I was able to actually bench Gronk, and it's so sad. And I'm not a Patriots fan, but in a way, I'm kind of sad to see what's happened to Gronk.
You don't get fantasy points for blocking.
This is true. Well, gentlemen, I want to tell you that I thank you very much. We've done this once a month over the past football season. I look forward to doing this again with you. This Fantasy Football Strategy Guide does want to send a shout-out to Dylan. Dylan will be graduating, and hopefully we can work it out with him that he can come back and join us for a future podcast coming into next season. But unfortunately, Dylan, looks like we're going to have to find someone to fill your seat, and you'll be missed because we really appreciate you being a part of this podcast this year.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. And Parker, Brian, we expect to see you back for the Fantasy Football Strategy Guide Season 3. And maybe we can get some other people from campus to come down and talk fantasy football with us.
We're on Season 3 already.
Next year will be Season 3.
Looking forward for it.
All right. Well, for Parker Rose, for Dylan Kleintop, for Brian Christiana, this is Paul Miller, and this has been the Fantasy Football Strategy Guide. We'll catch you again next August.